Hi, Rep. Tyler.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Cheryl.
No, thank you. And welcome, Christian, and Senator Rush as well, who are not on screen. So welcome to the Board of Trustees meeting. And I will officially begin this meeting with an affirmation of our principles. The trustees of the Boston Public Library reaffirm our commitment to racial equity and to the principles of diversity, equity, and inclusion more broadly. The library is formally committed to becoming an anti-racist organization in response to systemic racism, inequity, and injustice prevalent in our society. We acknowledge also that the Boston Public Library's central branch stands on the land that was once a water-based ecosystem providing sustenance for the indigenous Massachusetts people, and is a place which has long served as a site of meetings and exchange among nations. We're committed to land acknowledgement for all locations at which we operate, and we reaffirm this commitment to set the context for our planning and deliberation and public engagement so that they take place from the spirit of welcome and respect found in our motto, free to all. I want to begin by thanking Mayor Kim Janey for her steadfast support for the Boston Public Library. She enthusiastically participated in the opening of the Adams Street branch and the Roxbury branch at Nubian Square, accompanied by her mother and her daughter. And she shared personal stories about the impact of the library has had on her life. To her and to us, the library is a safe and welcoming place. Thanks also for the mayor's Joy Agenda, which provided free ice cream for patrons and staff at all of our branches. And thank you for the Joy Agenda, which brought Maria from Sesame Street to the BPL for the Hispanic Heritage Month. And of course, today we welcome our mayor-elect, Michelle Wu. Her mission and commitment to social justice aligns with ours, and we look forward to our close partnership. I also want to thank our partners and collaborators, the BPL Fund for your support and active engagement and program support, the associates for your continued staff support and conservation. And I want to say a special thank you for your Writers in Residence program and really the diversity of the fellows that participated. And thank you to the Leventhal Map Center for continuing to educate and inform. I visited the new exhibit twice. It's called Bending Lines, and I know that all of you will enjoy it. So that concludes my opening remarks, and I'd like to turn to Pamela for the roll call.
Thank you, Priscilla. All right, I'm just going to read your last name. Reminder, the meeting is being recorded. Arana Ortiz.
Here.
Arenas.
Here.
Asim. I'm sorry. Bal.
Here.
Berman.
Here.
Bradley. I know you're there, Ben.
Here, sorry.
Thank you. Josina Foy.
She put it in the chat.
Oh, okay.
She might need to be promoted though.
Jay, can you promote Cheryl? I'm sorry, Linda Dorsina Foy. Douglas.
Here.
Hyla. Hawkins is absent. Linehan.
Here.
Brush. He is I just received, he is here. He's also having technical audio issues. Westra.
Here.
And Tyler.
Here.
I did you backwards, sorry.
Pamela, I don't think you called me or I responded, so I just wanted the record to reflect that I'm here.
Oh, I'm sorry, I checked you off, Cheryl.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Douglas, we have a quorum.
Great, thank you. That completes the roll call of trustees. And the next item is the approval of minutes. And I know that all of you have received them. And can I please get a motion to approve the minutes?
So
So
moved.
moved.
So move.
Thank you.
Second.
Second. Are there any,
Second.
are there any questions or edits, revision to the minutes? Hearing none, Pamela, could you call the roll call for the vote?
Yes. Arano Ortiz,
Yes.
Arenas,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Berman,
Yes.
Bradley,
Yes.
Cronin,
Yes.
Josina Fori,
Yes.
Douglas,
Yes,
Hyler, Linehan,
Yes.
Rush,
Yes.
Westra,
Yes.
and Tyler.
Yes.
Thank you.
all right, thank you very much. Now I'd like to turn it over to our president for his report.
Thank you, Chair Douglas, and good morning, trustees. I would like to just begin my remarks by echoing the administration's also thanks to Mayor Janey and the outgoing team, as well as stating on record, we look forward very much to working with the incoming Mayor-elect Wu. And although I cannot at this time tell you details, please be on the lookout for a very small but significant role that the library is playing in today's swearing-in ceremony. Something I think you'll all be proud of once that is known. We also just want to acknowledge what a banner year, despite all the challenges that have been before us, what a banner year this has been for the branch system, largely through the support of the capital budget, beginning under Mayor Walsh and the Walsh administration's team support. Continuing through Mayor Janey, and one or two more events that we anticipate will happen before the end of the year under our third mayor of this calendar year. Those, of course, include the ribbon cutting at the Adams branch, the ribbon cutting at the Roxbury branch, celebrating its 1 year of opening, and a third ribbon cutting on December 4th for the completion of the Roslindale branch of the Boston Public Library. Additionally, we were thrilled also to see the unveiling of the first Percent for Art project in the city of Boston in front of the Jamaica Plain branch. So that has been officially unveiled. At the opening of the celebration and opening celebration of the Roxbury branch, we saw the first of potentially 3% for Art projects installed, and we look forward to the completion of that work, as well as future work that is in process. I received an incredibly exciting email yesterday from the architects who were involved in the Roxbury branch, that's UTL Design. We have now received not just the 8 officially announced architectural awards for the work and design at that branch, but also that there are a couple more coming that will be announced before the end of the year. Those are currently embargoed, but are official. And so I don't know off the top of my head a time where one of our branch renovations or new branch buildings has won what will become 11 awards for architecture and design. And so this is just an amazing accomplishment by the whole team. And we, of course, now have the responsibility and pleasure of delivering on what the promise of this architectural accomplishment has. And so our congratulations go out to all who worked on that, whether on the BPL team, the city team, public facilities department, the architects and their team of contractors and consultants. So another major accomplishments there. I do now want to turn to other exciting news, which is the addition of 3 new managers to the BPL team. And I am thrilled that 2 of these are internal promotions and 1 also a very important external hire. And so we're going to give each person just a moment to say hello and introduce themselves. So I will call all 3 names, and then I believe Jay is going to do some more magic and allow them to say hello to the trustees. And so the first person we will hear from is Angelique Davis, the new assistant HR manager, who has already been with us for several years, but has really shown tremendous ability and gained tremendous experience in this role, and is now added to the team. She will be followed by Jessie Snow, who's been promoted to Assistant Manager for Youth Services, someone who has played many roles over several years here at the library, and we're excited to bring more capacity to the Youth Services team as we double down, if you will, on making youth engagement and all of what that means a top priority for the library as we continue through our COVID recovery period. And then thirdly, we'll hear from the newest member of the team, Sarah Zafiris, who has just joined as of yesterday as Chief of Staff to the library. Angelique, would you like to say hello?
Hello, everyone. My name is Angelique. I've been with the city for a little over 6 years. Started off at Boston Community Centers, and then I transferred to the library. I've been here ever since. I've been in a couple of positions, and now I am the HR assistant manager.
Thank you. Jessie, if you're here, would you like to say hello?
Yes. Hi, good morning. I have been at the Boston Public Library since 2001. Most recently, I was the Teen Services team leader in Teen Central since the renovation of that space in 2015. I worked closely with the designers in that space in gathering direct input and feedback from teens on their thoughts in the space. I provided an overall vision for our services programs, school connections, and outreach for the staff serving teens. In my current position as the Assistant Manager of Youth Services, I work closely with the Manager of Youth Services, Neighborhood Services, and the children's and teen librarians in the branches. Thank you.
Thank you. And Sarah.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm really pleased to be here. My background is actually in city and state government. I worked for 14 years for Mayor Menino, so I'm very, very happy to be back in city government and thrilled to be at the library. I've been a 41-year Boston Public Library card holder, which I'm telling you how old I am more or less, but I'm really thrilled to join the team. And Madam Chair, I wanted to share with you, this is a while ago too, but one of my first experiences in public service was actually interning in your office when you were the Secretary of Consumer Affairs and Business Regulations. So you would remember me, but I remember you, and happy to see you this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you, Angelique, Jess, and Sarah. We look forward to your continued and new contributions helping the library be all that it can be. And I'm sure the trustees look forward to seeing you in person when we do more in-person meetings going forward. Trustees, I do want to take a minute or two to talk a little bit about issues raised during public comment and additional submissions submitted to the trustees by members of staff in recent times. There are 2 main topics that stand out. There were others, but there are 2 that I want to talk about briefly. And those are concerns and comments related to our collections ordering processes. And I want to assure you that the library management team is taking a serious look at all of what those comments are and what they mean. And our goal will be to determine a set of actions to ensure that we improve the current practices and ensure what is essentially the right end result, which is ensuring that for our patrons who visit branches in person, that what is on the shelves, especially for children's visitors, is as good as it possibly can be. I want to commend the staff who have been, now for many months in some cases, bringing these comments and concerns forward. But I also want to commend the staff who manage and participate in this process. There is no question in my mind that everybody wants the same results, and that all of the passion and hard work that is put into this work by our collection development team, librarians across the system, other library staff members who participate in selection process, as well as the staff throughout the branches who ensure that patrons receive what they want and need. Some prefer to obviously to look through catalogs, others prefer to put items on hold, others would prefer to browse the shelves, for example. And so our goal will remain to ensure that however one chooses to use the services of the Boston Public Library, that we have good practices and good processes that put all of our resources together in the best way possible. Because collections ordering goes in many ways to the heart of librarianship and the public library, there are not quick fixes or overnight changes, although there may be a couple of those that will surface as we go through the comments received. And so I think it's more important that we, as an institution, take the time to thoroughly evaluate the experience, both of those managing the process, those participating in the process, and those observing some of the results. For example, I think there are other protocols other than what you've heard about so far, including discretionary branch spending, which is assigned and which to date has not been fully utilized. So there are many topics related to this area that we want to brief you on at a later meeting in greater detail. The second topic that has been surfacing is again one that will take more thoroughness and detail to drill into and brief you on. And that is topics related to the internal organizational change relating to topics of equity, diversity, and inclusion, and specifically to racial equity. I think we have been engaged in this work more formally now for over a year. We have some really good progress to report in some areas. And because, however, this is about organizational change and transformation, again, this is not an overnight solution. And I'm resistant to jump on some solutions that would make us seem like we're just paying lip service to the principles involved or doing a Band-Aid over the solution. Again, we take the input of staff very seriously. We have heard from some who are speaking from their own lived experience as staff of color. And we will, this is why, in fact, we have made this the main topic of the next meeting of the full Board of Trustees. Again, I think we value also the trustees' guidance and input on this topic, and we look forward to picking that up in January. I think while there's progress on some fronts, there is other progress that has been much slower or not yet fully delivered the results that we would all like. But again, I think this is topic and a conversation that is necessary, is sometimes difficult, and one where we have to do better at valuing all of the voices, whether those are experiences that change our perceptions or our lived experience that inform unforeseen consequences or unintended consequences. And so we again appreciate the trustees' attention to this matter and your endorsement of our racial equity commitment. The chair read the statement, the summary statement of that at the opening of the meeting. So this is serious. This is urgent. But at the same time, we remain an organization which is more or less having a staffing crisis. I'm happy to report that the number of active full-time vacancies is going down, but we are still at something like 75 full-time active positions that we are trying to fill. That's lower than it was before, about 3 months ago, and is not fully reflective of a lot of the changes in positions that existing staff have been able to avail of. So the other good news buried in these numbers is staff have been able to take advantage of openings as either promotional opportunities. We just met 2 of our managers who did that, as well as lateral transfers where staff are staying in an equivalent role, but maybe moving to a location that they're more interested in or that they prefer. And so there's a lot of work on this. And it really is the largest challenge before us right now, and one that we are placing a lot of work in. This means, however, that our current hours will remain status quo for 2021, and we are beginning to look at when in early 22 we can return to hours that are very important to all of our neighborhoods, such as Saturday hours in branches, additional evenings in branches, Sunday hours at Central, and full long days on Mondays to Thursdays here at Central. We will be able to share with you at the next meeting, I believe, given the pace that we're on with hiring, what that schedule will look like. And so, and then the major topic, as I've said, will be the work in equity space for us at the January meeting. We will be in touch through the clerk and the chair regarding the appropriate point to do a more detailed briefing on the collections issues that have been surfacing as well. And so before I get to the main topic of today, which is the very exciting McKim Building Master Plan update, I want to pause and see if there are questions from the trustees at a general level.
David, on the staffing issue, beyond COVID, what would you cite as the main reasons for the 75 vacancies?
Yeah, and just for context, Trustee Bradley, we typically run in the 30 to 60 vacancy level. That's a normal time, so it's not normally down at 0, just because of the amount of churn there is normally in the organization. The single largest contributor to the high, which was up at the 90 plus level, the single largest contributor was the hiring freeze during COVID. So we, with the support of the city, did something really, really powerful and important, which has got through this period without layoffs, without furloughs. But the consequence of doing that was freezing vacant positions at the time for about a year. And so what we're really experiencing now is the downstream result of trying to fill those positions largely all at once. The other factors, and I don't have numbers for you on this. I'd be happy to do that maybe after the end of the calendar year. Was what I perceive as a larger number of retirements than we might normally have seen. And anecdotally, I'm aware of staff members who made what I would consider quality of life choices, where they had other opportunities that allowed them not to come fully back to the workplace. They had spouses or partners who were going to continue working remotely, possibly in other parts of the country or moving to other parts of the country. And so I think that in aggregate easily explains the level of vacancies that we've been as aggressively as we can working our way through over the last 4 months in particular. So I hope that's helpful. And I do believe that as I talk to my own friends and colleagues in other businesses and sectors, they have their own version of this too, that hiring generally is a big challenge for many organizations, regardless of their work.
Thank you.
David, on the personnel side, could you speak a little bit to how it's been challenging to try to achieve diversity in hiring goals along those lines at the same time? I would imagine it has been, so I'd love to hear a little bit about that.
Yeah, I'll give you a personal reflection, Trustee Lenihan, which is there's a felt urgency about filling these vacancies because of the sheer number. And I think we have all seen that, there is additional stress right now on many of our staff, whether they work at central, behind the scenes, on the front lines, or in branches, which in part would be alleviated partially by, oh my God, we have a full staff here at this branch. We can start to do more or deal with what comes up day in and day out. And so in general, the overall staff numbers, and I will get to this in January at the January meeting for sure, mapped pretty closely to the demographics of Boston and Greater Boston at least. However, that's not true of every department or team or level within the organization. And so we certainly have more work to do on that front. Indeed, one of the areas that the cohort working on diversity, equity, and inclusion formally flagged explicitly was the recruiting and hiring of staff of color in particular, including retention as well. And we need to develop a list of channels for more outbound recruiting. The traditional model of simply posting positions on the city website and then maybe doing some personal outreach is not going to deliver the pools that we want. Because, however, the library draws from the community of library professionals, sometimes from the technology space. These are sectors that already have their own challenges around diversification. So where we are pulling from pools that are not by their nature diverse when it comes to racial or gender diversity in particular, I think we face challenges. I do believe that there's an economic dimension to this as well, particularly for entry-level positions, where we are trying to recruit with a requirement that people live within the city of Boston. That is the formal residency requirement. And however one may feel about the value and historical importance of that, the cost of living in Boston is substantial. And if someone grew up here, perhaps then that's okay. But if we're trying to recruit from other parts of the country, or let alone just outside Boston proper, we're asking people to come in at a starting library or government salary and move to the city of Boston to take an entry-level position. And so I have formed an opinion that is challenging for many individuals.
Thank you. I mean, it provides an opportunity, one would imagine, to think about credentialing and outreach to some of the higher education institutions that exist in Boston to try to create some pathways.
And we have a very exciting opportunity with Simmons University in particular, which is the main and only library school in this immediate area, where we hope to launch in 2022 a program that specifically is essentially bringing more candidates of color into not just the program, but into the workforce as well. But that's one among what, 37 universities in the greater Boston area.
Thank you.
This is Evelyn, can we take a note for the D&I discussion in the next meeting? I would like to, I mean, we had YW Boston present a while back, I don't even know when. Can we make it a standing agenda as part of the updates to see where they're at? You know, so like going forward, instead of touching base every so often.
Yeah, we're happy to do that. I think particularly over the next year or two, when everybody recognizes we need to more aggressively move from planning and process work to implementation and action work. So if that becomes the dominant focus of our DEI work over the next, say, 18 months at least, I think we would welcome the opportunity to have that as a regular update meeting for the trustees. Whether it be with YW Boston or internal processes, or with another party that would run the next phase of the work.
Right.
Great.
I mean, it's just a topic that needs to be discussed. Who comes to the, you know, depends on where you're at. But I think, you know, having it as a standing item for updates would be good. And also if we could have a plan, you know, like sort of like a short-term, long-term plan included, that would be good.
Great. Yep.
Thank you.
So one of the things that David has pointed out and that we're discussing is that organizational change. One of the things that's missing is this, you know, is the fact that we are still conducting business online. And when we're working on cultural change, and particularly people feeling inclusive, included, and informed, and all of that, we're stuck in these Zoom boxes. So most of the times when we're working on in the DEI space, we have an opportunity to interact, really see people in action. So I'm looking forward to, I think our efforts will be accelerated when in fact we're together. But in the meantime, having it as a standing item and being in conversation about it will be a way to keep track. It's one of those things that when you, what do you call it? When you measure something, you get the results. When you track something, you get the results.
So I would now like to turn, if that's okay, if there are no further questions, to the major topic for the trustees' agenda, which I will introduce. And this is the update on the McKim master plan. As part of the context, I just want to recognize that the history here is of a multi-phased project that was begun in the 1990s and early 2000s, which renovated and restored about 75% of the McKim building. Never really got to the third floor other than the Sargent Gallery. And then there are, I believe, additional spaces that in the intervening period now need more work or have been identified as needing attention. The history of the library's capital focus, however, was in 2010, really to turn next to the Boylston Street building for attention rather than continue at that point in time with the McKim project. Over the last 7 to 10 years, really starting with the East Boston branch in modern times, our focus has been heavily on branch renovations, many of which had been neglected for some time, really due to fiscal challenges in the city at large. As we think about the McKim building now, we had realized as a staff that the old plan was really no longer operative. Different spaces had been found for the Leventhal Map Center, for example. Our services vision is now quite different than it would have been maybe 10 or even 15 years ago. There are preservation challenges that exist with the building itself today, and there are new accessibility standards and principles that we would all like to see the building respond to. And so we were able to engage in this master planning update. This was a capital project funded by the City of Boston to essentially update the master plan, or replace, if you will, the master plan, with a focus on 3 areas that you will hear about today. So before we introduce the firm, the architects who will present today, I just want to also thank now 3 mayors and many leaders at Public Facilities Department. I think we are joined today by Maureen Anderson, Senior Design Advisor, Jim McQueen, Senior Project Manager, and possibly the current head of Public Facilities, Kerry Griffin. And in addition to that team, as well as our own internal group, the Project Management Office at the Boston Public Library, led by Allison Ford, that with staff input and leadership input, we have a master plan to present to you today. And so I would now like to welcome our guests from Shepley Bulfinch, who incidentally are the same firm, although not the same individuals, the same firm who led much of the restoration and redesign and reimagination work in the 1990s and 2000s. And so Jeanette and Kelly,
David,
before we do that, Priscilla, yes.
Just one quick thing. If you want to make a public comment, please know that that period is closing. So please sign up now. Thank you.
And so now I would like to welcome Jeanette Blackburn, Managing Principal, and Kelly Brubaker, Library Planning Principal of Shepley Bulfinch. Over to you.
Thank you very much, David, for that nice introduction. I actually did work on the 1990s master plan. So for me, this is a very important milestone in a career-long association with the McKim building. And in addition to Kelly, who will be helping me present today, I'd also like to make a mention for our partner architect design lab, another important firm in the city of Boston. They've worked closely with us throughout the master plan, coordinating the historical assessments and managing the community input process. And Marianne Upton, a partner at Design Lab, is with us in the public area and can answer any questions in that regard when we get to the Q&A portion. Next slide. So we'll be walking you through the project from the beginning with the development of goals through the final recommendations, and we'll certainly have plenty of time for questions at the end. Next slide. And the master plan is, as David mentioned, focused on the McKim building and also on the Dartmouth Street Plaza, which is the entrance to the building, of course. And in looking at these two, we did take a hard look at the context in which the McKim building sits, especially how it connects to the Johnson building, how the Dartmouth Plaza connects to Dartmouth Street, and then to Copley Square across the way. Next slide. And so a master plan is a very important first milestone that's just one step in a continuing process. The planning recommendations set overall strategies and identify potential projects, but they do not yet include detailed design. That will come later. The next steps will be, of course, the funding, and design and construction, as well as funding, will all be multi-phased efforts. So as you can see, there are several more steps to take with the proposals we'll talk about today before they will become reality. Next slide. Throughout the project, we sought input from stakeholders, and we want to be sure to thank the Community Advisory Committee. And in addition, we met with focus groups representing library staff from various departments, as well as with external focus groups representing different sectors of the users of the library. And we held 3 open public community meetings, as well as supplemental meetings with the Boston Preservation Alliance, the Boston Landmarks Commission, and the Neighborhood Association of Back Bay. Next slide. So because of the pandemic, all of the stakeholder engagement was done virtually, but nonetheless, sessions were very well attended and the exchange was as vibrant as it could be from our Zoom boxes. And we really felt like we received a great deal of very thoughtful input. And the design team did have quite a bit of time within the McKim building, which is of course closed to the public, and we were able to spend time in the building and understand its nature in terms of the art and architecture and the physical condition of the building. Next slide. So as David mentioned, there were 3 primary goals that were the focus of the master plan. The first was to improve the building's itself, its historic fabric, and to provide sustainable building solutions that will position the library for the future. The next was to enhance spaces to promote engagement with the library's very distinctive collections. And then the third was to renew the spaces so that they're able to deliver modern library services as effectively as possible. Next slide. So, and then as we spoke with stakeholders, their priorities dovetailed very closely with these areas of focus. And they included ways to make the McKim building more welcoming and easy to navigate, the importance of the building as a historically significant work of art and architecture, and the identity of the McKim building as a place for research and scholarship that's open to all. Next slide. So as the design team worked through the library, we did a number of assessments that of course brought to light a whole range of challenges. The building systems are overall outdated. Climate control is very limited, especially on the 3rd floor, which has been closed to the public. There's water infiltration in some areas, which is a real concern for preservation of the building's art and architecture. And then level changes throughout the building, which were part of the original design, create some real accessibility challenges for users, which have been mitigated in some instances, but not in all instances. So in addition, the spaces of the 3rd floor, as you're aware, were completely closed to the public, except for the Sargent Gallery. And in this diagram in the lower right, you can see in green all of those areas that are closed on the 3rd floor. It represents about 30% of the total space in the McKim building that would be appropriate for public use. There's no indoor public route from the McKim lobby to the Johnson building, so visitors need to actually exit the building and go through the central courtyard outside to re-enter the Johnson building, which is a real stumbling block we found from the input sessions for visitors trying to use the building, especially when they come for the first time. Next slide. So in developing the master plan, we synthesized all this arrangement, all this information, and the recommendations that we're going to be bringing to you today center on the redesign of the Dartmouth Street Plaza to create a more accessible and welcoming entrance, updates to building systems to be more sustainable and resilient, creation of a skylit covering for the courtyard to enhance preservation and increase space use, and renewal of interior spaces, including the reopening of the third floor to improve the public experience and to support modern library services. And now Kelly's going to walk you through some of these aspects of renewal.
Great, thanks, Jeanette. So the question is, how do we create new contemporary library spaces that really reflect the culture and integrity of the McKim building? And what are those activities and experience we want to provide for your patrons? Next slide. So we're going to start by looking at the third floor. Now, I know there's a lot going on here, so I'm going to walk us through it, but our real goal here is to transform it. As Jeanette mentioned, currently the only public space on the third floor is the Sargent Gallery, which is located just to the right of the Cheverus room. And by giving the floor back to the community, we'll be enhancing the visitor experience by making the collection more accessible and services more readily available. The third floor has the opportunity to be patron-focused, providing a true one-stop for services that support reference, education, and collaboration. So when one enters the floor through the Sargent Gallery, they will have sightlines to the Wigan multi-purpose space, which is at the bottom of the plan here, where visitors of all ages are invited to engage in demonstrations to have a true hands-on experience with the collection. Excuse me. We are also proposing a new public elevator in the courtyard, which is that blue square right above the Cheverus room. And this will provide an accessible entrance into the Cheverus room, which is currently only accessible by stairs, and it will go from the first floor all the way up to the public spaces. Here in the Cheverus room, we are proposing to restore the space to accommodate BPL programs, giving the space back to the community. And so as we continue to circulate around the plan, as we go from the Sargent Gallery to the Cushman room, which is just north of the gallery space, visitors are drawn from one active space to the next. Patrons seating and collaboration rooms, which are the CR on the plan, are along the Boylston Street facade, and that will allow patrons to work together on projects, have access to digital content, and provide visibility and proximity to the library resources. The staffed service point that is at the hinge between the Johnson and McKim building will be there to assist patrons with their research and will also provide oversight to patrons that are using the new reading room. And finally, on this floor, we are providing a special collections classroom where the BPL can provide seminars that are open to the community around collections. And so as you can see here, the yellow is for patrons and the darker yellow is also for patrons, but with a secured access. So we're really trying to focus on giving space back to the public, which has been closed off for so long on this third floor. Next slide, please. So here you can see the original architecture of the reading room, which is the image on the left. Oh, there you go. And then the center image showing what it looks like today. And then the image on the right showing how we want to bring it back to its glory with the limited intervention, but really taking advantage of the natural light and the historic architecture. Here we are creating that reading room experience that allows researchers to engage with one another and work with the BPL's physical and digital collection on site. Next slide, please. So here's a photo of the Cushman room. Image on the left is of the current condition, and how it is used today is really for storage. And so really want to transform that and proposing a space that pulls you through that third floor and is a place, again, to access the reference collection and collaborate with one another. Next slide. So as we move to the second floor, the existing condition on the second floor, as Jeanette had also mentioned, is that all the rooms are connected to one another and you have to go, there's no way to actually enter any of those rooms, which limits the functions that can occur in these spaces. We are proposing to re-engage and activate this floor by providing an enclosed circulation path at the existing balcony, which you can see here by the blue dashed line that goes from the Boylston room to the northwest corridor. This allows access into Washington and Elliott without having to interrupt the functions that are happening in each. This will allow the Washington room to be a multi-purpose space to hold a variety of BPL programs. and it allows the Boylston Room to be a patron-focused space and Elliott to become a multi-purpose classroom to accommodate a variety of different layouts for teaching and sharing of information. Next slide, please. And from the moment you walk into McKim from Dartmouth Street entrance, you have a wow moment upon your arrival. And the question that came up in a few of our sessions was how to make the first floor more welcoming and inviting by making the circulation more intuitive, that as soon as you walk in, you're not quite sure where to go or how to navigate that first floor. And so we looked first at creating a more inviting and enhanced McKim exhibit hall by opening up and creating transparency into the orientation room, which is the room on the lower part of the plan that's highlighted in yellow, and showcasing exhibits as one circulates from the lobby to the orientation room and then through the exhibit hall itself. Next, we wanted to open up movement between, previous slide. Thank you. We really wanted to open up the movement between McKim and Johnson by removing the walls at the northwest or northeast corner of the upper right, which creates a more inviting corridor that will lead you to the reimagined Guastavino room that will also be transformed and having more flexible patron seating space. The widened circulation path will then pull you through the courtyard where we are proposing to enlarge the windows that are facing the courtyard of the Commonwealth Salon. This will allow for patrons to see into the Commonwealth Salon and engage with the events that are happening in that space. And here you can see on the image on the upper left is the before image of the Com Salon. And we are proposing to remove that mezzanine level that you see on the upper right of that photo to create a more double height space to accommodate a wider variety of programs and activities. And it's also important that we want to point out that we're modifying the current lift that provides access into the space and replacing it with an elevator for a more equitable approach into that area. Next slide here. So here, the image on the upper left is what I was referring to, where we are looking to take out those walls at that corner of that pinch point that's across from the Guastavino room. And will really help to allow you to move from McKim into the Johnson space. You can see in the sketch on the bottom left that we are proposing to provide columns that are similar in nature to the northwest corridor, and also recommend replicating the frescoes on the west and south walls, which you can see again in that image on the lower left. The other point of contact that we want to focus on is that the lobby becomes much more inviting. So the image on the upper right is the current lobby space, and the image on the right is our proposed. And we are looking to create a smaller desk for information and security, to upgrade the lighting, and creating visuals and signage through banners positioned on the columns and the walls of the lobby space. Next slide. And I'll pass this on to Jeanette to walk us through the courtyard.
Thanks, Kelly. So the potential to add a skylight covering to the courtyard is, of course, a big idea, maybe a new idea to some of you. The courtyard is and will always remain a beloved garden oasis, so we don't recommend any change to that. The vision is to maintain the gardens as well as the recently restored fountain as a feature, and to keep the garden areas accessible for patron use. Next slide. But to, by add a roof closure, add some additional significant benefits. So preservation is a really important one. The courtyard facades that surround the enclosure are really beginning to deteriorate, and the covering would stop weathering and degradation. It's interesting and I think powerful to note that the facades represent about 42% of the total exterior face of the McKim building. So all of the facades need restoration, but if you can stop the weathering of the courtyard by enclosing those facades, it will make a significant dent in the amount of facade real estate that the library needs to maintain and care for. So the enclosure would also help to buffer the interior spaces, providing a boost in terms of climate control that would stabilize some of those spaces where you're using really distinctive collections and to preserve the art and architecture. And as Kelly mentioned, there would be improvements to wayfinding and movement through being able to circulate on the second floor balconies rather than through the Washington and Elliott rooms, and also to be able to just walk through this beautiful courtyard space to get into the Johnson building rather than going outside. So, and then finally, of course, the courtyard on the next slide would provide opportunities for the library to increase programming to be year-round. Pre-pandemic, there were about 13 events in the courtyard from June to August. So imagine if you were able to have 4 times as many public events there. Next slide. So this approach has been used frequently to expand and protect cultural destinations. Some examples that we looked at included the Smithsonian's American Art Museum in Washington, D.C., and our own Museum of Fine Arts that have done similar renovations and expansions. And then, of course, there's the Gardner Courtyard, which, although it's original to the building in that case, is somewhat similar in spirit because it is maintaining a historic garden space in an interior environment. You know, we do recognize that it's different in the sense that at the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum, the gardens are not accessible to the patrons, but still that kind of feel of the green skylit space is something we could imagine as a suitable precedent for the look and feel of the courtyard at McKim. Next slide.
So the third area of focus that we had our attention to was the Dartmouth Street Plaza. And one of the goals of the master plan is to celebrate the plaza and create a more welcoming and accessible entrance into McKim. The proposed improvements offer a more human scale design compared to the existing space, which is primarily hardscape with a temporary ramp. And we are proposing a new sloped pathway that will be integrated into the existing hardscape. Again, a primary goal is to provide a design that really honors the historic architecture while addressing some of the public's desires for comfort, shade, and outdoor seating. Next slide. And so here you have a closer look at how the ramp is integrated into the landscape here. It's a sloped walkway, and then you can see how the trees start to have a buffer and create that shade for the outdoor space. Next slide. And here, again, our goal is to transform the plaza into a more comfortable space that is still active and inviting in the public realm. This diagram on the left identifies how the reimagined Dartmouth Street Plaza can connect with the future Copley Square that's being designed by Sasaki currently. You can imagine to utilize the spaces that accommodate BPL programming, musical and theatrical performances, extending the Boston Book Festival into the space. There's so many possibilities that we can continue to imagine. And with that, I'll pass it back to Jeanette.
Next slide. So finally, the master plan includes recommendations for a top to bottom renewal of the building infrastructure and systems. This will prioritize sustainable choices that are energy efficient, healthy, and make wise use of resources so that we can meet new climate resiliency standards, protect collections, and preserve the building's art and architecture. Next slide. So this master plan is comprehensive and clearly ambitious. And moving forward, options for creating a series of phased projects that address specific needs will need to be considered by the city and by the library. So phasing will allow the project to be funded over time, and we will also provide options for keeping the McKim building open during construction. So in summary, next slide. This master plan is focused on a building that is both an architectural masterpiece and a cultural destination. So the recommendations for McKim as they become a reality, will preserve and renew the building, return the closed off spaces that are about 30% again of the library spaces to public use, and modernize the McKim services and programs to advance the library's missions. So a lot of work, a lot of things to consider there. We thank you very much for our time, and we're happy to take any questions.
I had a question on the enclosure for the courtyard. That's a really good idea, I think, to maximize use. Was there any thought to making the roof retractable, or would that be too expensive?
Well, we spent a lot of time looking at the roof and how we could do it so that it wouldn't damage the fabric of the historic fabric of the building. And so literally retracting it, for instance, not a la stadium style, would put too much force on the existing building to make that possible. But there are certainly ways that we could have operable components of it. So lights that open, so it could become, a climate that's enclosed in temperate times and then open when the weather is nice. So that will be part of the further development, certainly, to look at that. But some management of expectations about some operability rather than the whole thing opening up.
Yeah, I thought this is a really exciting presentation, Jeanette and Kelly. Thank you very much. I agree with Ben. To me, the most exciting part of this is the courtyard enclosure. I think that really could be transformative. I wonder if you could talk a little bit more about how you see a courtyard with an enclosure like this fostering engagement. Are there ways, for example, that you would expect expanding the restaurants and eating options? How are you seeing that space being used to its fullest potential and getting the most people in the library that we can?
Do you want me to take that, David?
Why don't you start, and then we'll chime in from a service point of view. And we have Michael and Laura and Beth and Eamon and Allison who can also chip in with more of the library side answers to any questions the trustees have too. So Jeanette, but why don't you start?
Sure. So, well, the courtyard is sizable. It's about 12,000 square feet. So certainly, anything can happen there, right? It can be used for some of the things that happen in there now. So, like we imagine it being equipped for performances and films and lectures, the kinds of things that are cultural draws that it is used for in the summer now could be extended year round. Certainly, yes, there could be cafe tables opening up onto it from some of the restaurant functions. That wasn't one I had thought of, but it's a great one that I could imagine happening in there, and certainly happens in the Smithsonian, I know, at the American Art and Architecture Museum, as well as at the MFA. And then the Commonwealth Salon, which is one of your major meeting spaces, also abuts the courtyard on the first floor. So that would be another opportunity to start to connect meeting space, public gathering with the courtyard. And the last one that I'd mention is that with the balcony going all the way around, that's the roof of the arcade, you could open the Washington and Elliott rooms, which are also thought of as multi-purpose spaces, to be places that might in some way engage with the courtyard because they overlook it.
Jay, can I have Michael join us as panelist for this part of the discussion? But I think, Christian, Trustee Wester, there's nothing that can't be on the table, but I think we feel that we want to ensure that as we're on the topic of the courtyard now, that we preserve the character and feel and understanding and vibe, if you will, of the courtyard, both for historical reasons, but also for community engagement reasons. And I think today we do courtyards in the concert, and we do occasional children's programming out there. And I think being able to do that year round is really one of the bigger promises of this possibility. We wouldn't want to ensure, it's well used in the summer as is. So I don't know what more engagement looks like. And I think we want to avoid situations where people feel they have to buy something in order to utilize the services, because well, that works for some members of the population. It's not necessarily, we wouldn't be introducing barriers for those who might feel that's a disincentive rather than an incentive.
Thank you.
Michael, if you're on, would you like to add?
Sure. Thank you, David. Good morning, trustees. I don't have too much to add beyond what David said. He captured it all pretty well. I will say the courtyard is quite amazing at the way it draws people in, even when it's still quite cold. So as early as March, you'll see people sitting in there. There are still people sitting in the courtyard today, right now. So certainly enclosing it and regulating the temperature a little bit more will certainly make it just incredibly busy all year round. Our concerts in the courtyard often fill the space. We can certainly expand those throughout the year. It is a pass-through space, and it will be even more so when it's enclosed. So that will even attract more people to the events that happen in the courtyard. And then during the COVID period, as David mentioned, we really increased the number of children's programs in the courtyard, and our children's library staff were very inventive, doing scavenger hunts and all sorts of programs that really engage children in a really unique way, utilizing the space beautifully. So I think that will really offer a bunch of new opportunities as well.
And while it would increase the opportunities for after-hours events, I would not want this to become a driving factor in leading the renovation, because while I think it's not core to our everyday mission, the enterprise revenue that comes in through our events business does in fact support many of our staff positions and much of our work. So I want to neither dismiss the importance of that, because it's vital to be able to do all that we do, but I also don't want to lead with that as a main driver. It's really the everyday use that is improved. I was thrilled to learn from the consultants that also enclosing the courtyard would put 42% of the facade of the building. There's more in the courtyard almost than, or there's almost as much in the courtyard as there is on the exterior of the building, would put that on a really good preservation track, which is very important, as well as enabling interior circulation from the McKim building to the Boylston Street building on the second floor, which we currently cannot do. So there are additional reasons why this is not only a nice and good thing and another
space to activate, but it solves accessibility and wayfinding and other problems too. Sorry.
I just, and again, I think we're all really intrigued by the courtyard piece. And again, I might have missed this in the presentation, but one of the things that makes the courtyard so unique as a space in downtown Boston, and having spent so many hours there with my kids growing up, is the natural light. Mm-hmm. So is the idea that if a cover was created, that somehow it would, whether or not it can retract or not, that it would be of a material that would still allow in a lot of natural light? Okay.
Yes, it would be a skylight.
Okay. Great.
David, I have a comment and a question, if I can. It's Joe.
Please go ahead.
Sure. So my comment is I really applaud the wayfinding. Like Cheryl, having spent many, many hours in the library, I still get lost at times, given the connection between the two buildings. And so I think wayfinding and making them much more of an obvious and logical flow is really important for the whole patron experience. My question is, it seems that most of the intended uses for the new spaces or the renovated spaces is more for sort of multi-purpose and collaborative uses, which is great. Will there be any collections in those spaces, open stacks where people can either get reference materials or books that circulate, or is that going to remain mostly in the Johnson building?
I'll have Laura and Beth join us for a more detailed answer to this, because Joe, I agree, Trustee Berman, I agree that may not have come through as strongly in terms of the types of services we're talking about. In all cases, I think these are really collection-centered services. that we're doing, because I think one of our largest problems as an institution with, whatever the estimate is, 21, 23 million objects, how do we get those into, well, sometimes physically in the hands of members of the public, but how do we get engagement with those collections to be more accessible, more available, and quite frankly, more democratic and more inviting? And so without sort of, I think, engagement spaces that are driven by collections, we have difficulties doing that. And Laura can also just remind us, I think, that there's a bigger collection study happening as well in parallel. And so these two things together will give us inputs into a longer term strategy that we can talk about next year. Laura and Beth, and then back to Michael, just comments on this, the service and collections aspect of these envisioned spaces.
Good morning. I'll start first and then hand it over to Beth. As David mentioned, we're certainly excited for the opportunity to have more spaces where our patrons can interact with collections. So you might have seen some of the mention of the classrooms and reading rooms. There also, we've looked at reference areas and other ways that people will engage with the public. So there's certainly going to be areas where people will have direct access to more reference type materials or frequently requested materials that now are in the closed stacks, but we can bring out and have on hand to people. There will be opportunities for collection objects or other items that may be on display or featured throughout the building for people to see. And then just tangentially, the whole approach to this is also going to make the environment better for collections. So enclosing the courtyard helps with the environment and the fluctuations. So it makes the environment more stable, and we're able to bring out more of our collections into a better situation. And if Beth is on the call, I'll let her speak up if there's anything she wanted to add to that.
Good morning, trustees. The one piece I would add is really the synergies among our collections are showcased, I think, in a very important way, particularly on the third floor of the McKim building, because it really does. Right now we have, because of the architecture of the building as it exists, we really have very siloed public service locations for reference and collection accessibility. And so this ties in really nicely with the reopening of the newly renovated Rare Books and Special Collections reading room that happens next year, which we really see to be the kickoff of this work. That is on the same floor and abuts essentially many of the spaces that we are talking about for renovation, including much more integration with our reference team. And Michael can speak more about that. But really, we are looking for a seamless patron experience, which is about finding what the patron needs in as seamless a way as possible. And as Laura mentioned, another really exciting aspect of this is both the ability for us to host more types of programming, whether it is different experiences for classes and other groups to come in and use our materials, to renovate exhibition spaces for us to bring out some of the most significant materials from our collection to showcase them. And so this really, we see it as being a lot of different ways for people to interact with collections. Not, again, special collections are within closed stacks. It is not a browsing experience, but there really, I think, are many opportunities for discovery that we don't have with some of the restrictions. And I'm going to ask if Michael can talk about the reference piece.
Sure, and I'll be very brief because Beth did that really well. So this is a really exciting opportunity for us because we do have an enormous research collection that gets a lot of use. And we've been spending a lot of time working on making that more and more discoverable and accessible with the public. And this is a wonderful opportunity that will allow our research services department and the special collections departments to work much more closely together. As you may have heard me say before, when someone comes into the library looking to do some research or to write a book or to do some work, they don't know if they want a rare book or something in a special collection or just something in the research or circulating collections. So to have a team that can just help with a person and direct them or bring them to the space they need very easily and all on one floor, it's really going to be wonderful. And Our Chief of Adult Library Services, Jonna Gifford, who oversees our reference services throughout the system, has already for quite a while now been working closely with Beth Prindle and how our research services team and our special collections team can work together to provide a better experience for the public.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
Thank you all.
I would be remiss in not just citing the now 12+ year experience with 11th Hall Map Center, where we have the library's wonderful map collections, which are used as educational tools, as an object with which you can teach geography, physics, history, civics, you name it. And where not only do school groups come in from all across the city to visit and have those experiences, but that team is also equipping teachers with curriculum to animate the subjects they're teaching in their all classrooms. So if we can do anything similar to that with the third floor of the McKim building as we move forward, then I think it allows us to deliver on all of the promises of all of this building, all of these collections, which we're not able to fully live up to today. Additionally, let's just remember that the rest of that third floor of McKim, that was the home for fine arts and music, the home for the rare books collection in the Jordan Room, for a while the Prince collection in Cushman, and exhibitions in the Wigan Gallery, all of which were public areas at one time for the public to come in, and which we have lost because the conditions are no longer suitable to support staff or members of the public, and barely for collections, maybe not even.
Great. Thank you for answering those questions, everybody. I appreciate it. Really helpful.
I think we have one more question, and then we'll go move to the vote for this.
Thank you so much. So first of all, thank you, Jeanette and Kelly. What a wonderful presentation, and what a great project for you to work on. It must have been so much fun to dive into all of this. Couple of quick questions. What's a potential timeline for this? You talked about a phased-in approach, so just curious about that. And then I assume there's a whole sort of actual project design and approval process that precedes all of that.
Yes, and I think this is a very critical milestone today to have the trustees' endorsement of the overall direction. Clearly, these are not design, and there's still a lot of work to do. These are more ideas and concepts in some cases, but ones we're very wedded to. The costs will not be insubstantial. You have some ballpark figures on one of those slides. And so following today's hopefully positive vote, our job will be to do similar briefings with the new mayoral administration, with the board of the fund, and potentially have conversations with state stakeholders, because we know that the success of the early 90s and 2000s meant that the financing was a combination of city, state, and private fundraising. So we will need to get to a capital campaign, and that starts with a feasibility study. And before the feasibility study comes socialization and checking with additional buy-in for all of this, all of these ideas. And so you are the first group and the most important group, as the group charged with the oversight of the collections, buildings, and the identity of the library to allow us to move forward. And so we are doing that today, and then we'll continue. Sorry,
Thank you so much. And what is your name?
What
is it?
Before I call.
Linda, you have to mute the.
My name is Matt. Matt? Okay, Matt, I'm Linda. Okay, wait, I gotta do a new password.
So yeah, so we're doing a good deal of the socialization, information sessions. There are other community groups. There's a deeper conversation with staff that needs to happen. And then ultimately the question is, how many phases does this get done in? If it is all to move forward, is it one large phase which would require us to close, or is it multiple phases which could be driven by the opportunity to stay open, but could equally be driven by the level of funding that becomes available? So we have a process to engage in, but no clear answers other than the direction that we're going in.
Hey, any more questions or comments? So I want to say I'm really thrilled with this plan. I particularly appreciate the trees, which are going to keep this area from being a hot zone and to make it a more welcoming environment. The front entrance is planned for the front entrance to ensure that accessibility for people is outstanding, and so I commend you. Thank you so much. But may I get a motion to endorse the recommendations of the McKim Master Plan as presented and authorize the library administration to proceed with plans to pursue funding and engage in the next level of planning, design and implementation?
So moved.
So moved.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Any discussion? Pamela, could you conduct a roll call vote, please?
Of course. Arana Ortiz,
Yes.
Arenas,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Berman,
Yes.
Bradley,
Yes.
Cronin,
Yes.
Josina Fori, Douglas,
Yes.
Linehan,
Yes.
Rush,
Yes.
Westra,
Yes.
Tyler.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Shepley Bullfinch, for coming and sharing this. And really, this is really an exciting future for all of us.
Thank you. It's our pleasure, and we look forward to next steps. It's the beginning of an exciting journey.
Thank you. Our next agenda item is new business, and I'm really pleased that I want to start this because it follows on with the renovation of McKim. As you know, we created a special collections committee, and today I'm pleased to announce that Trustee Ben Bradley has agreed to chair the special collections committee. He's a longstanding member of this board since 2018, and he always willingly serves. He's been on the governance committee, the executive committee, and we're really delighted that Ben has accepted this role. So Ben, would you like to say a few words?
Sure. Thanks, Priscilla. I'm excited about undertaking this, and the special collections. Our special collections have been a long time interest of mine. Recently, I had a chance to, thanks to Laura and Beth, gave me a tour of many of our treasures, of the rare books and manuscripts, prints, photos, fine arts, and music. I met a dozen or so of the staffers who work back in the stacks, and it was good to meet them. I especially enjoyed revisiting the Leslie Jones photo collection that I had used personally in the biography I wrote of Ted Williams, and now they're all digitized and in great shape. But much of what the staff has done in the last several years has been invisible largely, such as reorganizing and restructuring, digitizing the manuscripts and photos, and repairing a mold outbreak, and now moving materials into new spaces. The day I visited, for example, there was a beehive of activity with pallets of new shelving being brought in, which we had to step lively to avoid. So I'm really looking forward to working with Beth, Laura, and their staff to help grow and showcase some of the jewels of our library.
Great, and thank you. And in terms of the organization, I understand, Ben, that we have one of the trustees, one of the members will step in as your vice chair.
Yes, Matthew Dames, who was formerly head of the BU library, now head of the Notre Dame library. And he and I are going to have a more of a get acquainted chat soon, but I look forward to working with him.
Great, thank you. So we're really excited that, as you can tell, I'm really excited about that committee, and thank you so much for your leadership. Is there any other new business?
So if I might just add, I apologize. John Heiler has been stuck in the general session. He was here. He did vote via message to me that he wanted to approve the McKim master plan. I just wanted to go on record and let you know that.
Thank you. All right. So I just wanted to, the other new business, again, and David mentioned this, is that the Roslindale opening will be December 4th, and the time is yet to be determined. So please check back at our website. And now we're going to go to public comment, and I will turn it over to Pamela to manage that process.
Thank you. We only have 4 that signed up for the public comment. I have, first would be David Vieira. Next would be Siddiqui Kambon, Alyssa Kadillik, and then Cindy Dye. Jay, if you wouldn't mind unmiking David Vieira first.
Yes, good morning, everyone. I have no public comment today.
Thank you, David. We're glad you're here. Enjoy your Thanksgiving.
And to all of you also.
Thank you, David. Next, we have Siddiqui Kambon.
All right, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, okay. Let me just, well, first of all, good morning. I know I've heard the reference to the issues of inclusion and racial equity on a regular basis. And so I'm on here now calling on the trustee board to right or wrong. Look, we still got a controversy about the library name. Very quickly, I'm the director of the Black Community Information Center. The Nubian Square Coalition is a program in the Information Center that led the effort for the name change of Dudley Square to Nubian Square. And subsequently, our next target was going to be the actual station. But I had done a presentation previously to the Transportation Board down at the State House, and a couple of state reps approached me and said, Mr. Kambon, if the vote goes well for the square, you're going to be in good shape for the station. And so essentially, what happened was that we got the vote, and we said, okay, we're going to now, we're going to now campaign around the station piece. And then I got a call from the office of Representative Tiger's office saying that a vote had been taken to confirm the station name to Nubian Station. So anyhow, what I'm saying is that, you know, the people have spoken, and we're calling on the trustee board to do the same thing in regards to what we're looking with this whole piece right here. Even in terms of the issue of, even Mr. Leonard has acknowledged the fact that there's a strong sentiment in our community for the Nubian name, to the extent that I believe that even without a vote that he included in Nubian Square. And we're saying we don't want the name of a library, that's a sentence. Library name. And so what it is that as this gets prolonged, what happens is that there's more and more, for lack of a better term, anger in the community about saying, well, wait a minute, we want the Nubian Library name. Why is it we're being told no?
I'm very sorry, but it's been 2 minutes. If you could.
All right, well, let me just say this, closing this and saying that Mayor-elect Michelle Wu has endorsed the Nubian Library name, and we would like to think that with her starting a new administration, that there won't be this contentious piece going on right now about this library name, and we're calling on you as a body because of the fact that we're saying that the community has spoken and that a few people should not dictate to the community what our library name should be, and we're calling on you to correct that, and we want the Nubian library name so that the mayor starts off with a fresh start with no contention.
Thank you. If we could move on to the next, it would be Alyssa Kadillik.
I believe Alyssa had to leave and will submit her comments in writing.
Okay, thanks. If we could move on to Cindy Dye.
Hi. I wasn't planning on commenting, but since you're talking about the McKim restoration, I thought I should. When we had the staff Zoom meeting about this, it was blithely suggested that collections could be put into the basement of the McKim and it could be waterproofed. It cannot be waterproofed. There is no way to waterproof the basement. We put collections in the basement once before in this process back in the 90s. We flooded, and the Hurricane Ida has demonstrated that anything with a hole on top will get wet sooner or later, especially since we're built on top of a swamp. Please do not put collections in the basement. I suggest that the basement below the McKims, that area is actually perfect for those collaboration rooms, which otherwise would take up space up on the 3rd floor, where collections could actually be for people to interact with. As you go forward in the design, please consult the New England Document Conservation Center about their advice on those collections. I'm really happy to see the roof of the skylight over the courtyard and the work on the internal systems of the library, but I think that the focus of the internal plan, the design, focusing on seating and collaboration rooms rather than collections and librarians, will make for a building that is a homeless shelter during the day and a party palace for the rich at night. Let's have librarians there. Specialized librarians can do programs. The previous fine arts, music, etc., the science reference collection, which was the first thing we lost, and that was a mistake. Having those specialized librarians gave people better access. And as the map room demonstrates, having specialized librarians will also give us people who can do programs and make those connections between the community and the collection. Thank you.
Thank you. That's it for public comment.
Thank you very much. And again, I wish everybody a really nice Thanksgiving. Thank you for this meeting. I'm enlivened and uplifted by the McKim plan and also by the conversation today. Could I have a motion to adjourn, please?
Motion.
So moved. Second.
Second.
Yes.
Thank you all. Enjoy your day.
Take care. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Take care, everybody.
Thank you all.
Everyone have a good day.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.